Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News.
In a matter of months from now, Nigerians will once again have another opportunity to redefine the political leadership of their beloved country. So much has happened in the past 3 years. The last time a similar chance was utilized by Nigerians to effect the very first handover of power from one political party to another. The winner of that election in 2015, the All Progressives Congress, is in the driving seat as Nigeria inches closer to another decision time. But it's been quite a rough ride for the ruling party, particularly for its national chairman, Oshiomhole. At the moment, he's fighting a two-pronged battle. First, against a trio of disgruntled APC governors who have accused him of not playing fair in the recent party primaries. And secondly, against the Department of State Security, who last week quizzed him over allegations of bribe-taking. Joining us now to talk about all that and more is the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Oshiomhole. Comrade, welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us
Thank you,
today.
and good morning.
Good morning, comrade. Good to see you on the morning show. Now, quickly, this whole encounter with the Department of State Security, you have tried to explain, there's some explanation out there, but the key thing that I take away from it is you saying it was a routine conversation with the DSS. What exactly happened? What was the substance of the conversation? What did they ask you?
Well, with due respect, I believe this issue is overflogged. For over 1 week, we'll be discussing an invitation or a visit to DSS. I have had a chat with very senior media executives in Lagos, and I've further spoken to it yesterday. I don't think it makes news anymore now to begin to recycle the same story. I think Nigerians are aware of the issues, and to be honest, it is not worth my while anymore to keep talking about a visit to state security services as if this was a particular event. I think we have moved on. We should begin to discuss about what is the need for Nigeria now. In your background conversation, I heard you talking about we are about to go for general election. Nigeria about to have another opportunity to make a choice as about governance issues, etc., etc. I think what will excite in Nigeria now is not whether a chairman had a conversation with an agency of state. It's about what are now the issues before Nigerians as we approach 2019 election. That would be worth my while. Honestly, I have no great now with invitation to SSS as if this is a big news. Some of you are being government and SSS invitations, or whether you go there or they invite you on their own, these are daily routine. To be honest, nothing new to add, nothing new to subtract from what I've said earlier.
Well, I mean, I think it's still important.
They've been very well covered in both the print and electronic media.
No, I think it's still important because, as I said earlier, the substance of it is not there because it was alleged publicly that you were accused of taking bribe during the primaries. And that's a very serious allegation, particularly when you recall that a certain Bishop Uche had gone to court also in another matter to say that the EFCC should investigate you. So on one hand, there's this issue of bribe-taking. On the other hand, there's also a matter in court. I think you need to clear the air because it's your integrity that is being questioned.
My brother, you were in government. There were allegations against you as well. So allegations are cheap. And you also know, if, as you said, matters are in court, are we converting this forum to a court session for me to begin to defend allegations filed by certain persons? So I think we should leave what is in court before the courts, and let's go to court and argue them. That's what is done in a mature democracy. You're not going to convert the money show to a judicial session and where you are going to serve whether as a prosecutor or what. I think I don't want to discuss what is in court. You know, it will be sub judice to try to do that.
Well, I mean, this is
now, it doesn't matter what you think. I believe, my brother, that I have sufficiently spoken about the matter of interaction between myself and the DSS. And I have nothing new to add to what I've already said. If there are people who have remained unclear, they should go back and read my statements in the press or play back as they were recorded in the electronic media up to yesterday. I think we should move on to real issues of development, real issues of why we are in politics, real issues of what is it for Nigeria as we march to 2019. You know, what are we going to do differently? What is opposition offering us? How is APC going to respond to it? This will be worth my while, and I think this will be what is going to excite Nigerians. We should move away from politics of you. There have been allegations against you. There's allegation against you as well. There's allegation against everybody. We must move beyond those now to begin to speak to the real issues.
Well, this is not a cross-examination, but let me reconstruct the conversation.
Exactly. So you are not going to insist that what I have spoken to over the past 4 days, I should continue to speak to it. Unfortunately, if it is what you want, to be very honest, it's no longer what my wife.
I mean, this is the morning show. You know, you may have spoken at other fora, but for the benefit of our own viewers, we're trying to get clarification on a number of issues. But let's go back to the issue of the primaries.
No, but with due respect to you, I have clarified these matters. I've explained these matters to the print and electronic media. I have done so in Lagos. I've done so in Abuja. I repeated it again yesterday. And it cannot be something that, you know, we keep on recycling. It's boring to me now, to be honest.
Now, during the primaries, there were a lot of complaints. There were persons who said you dictated...
Excuse me?
I'm now talking about the APC primaries and the protests from members of the party across the country that the National Working Committee of the APC under your watch just decided to dictate how that process should turn out. That is one. Second, some of your members are also saying they paid money. They paid, you know, so much money to get forms to be part of that process, and they were excluded constructively out of that. Is the party going to refund money to those aggrieved persons? If not, will you still insist that the primaries process was fair and credible?
I think you still want to insist that you detained me in discussing what obviously is stale. In the opposition party, the PDP, they have issues. Even in Ogun State, we are hearing about the leader of the PDP, they have been, you know, having the right to feed his candidate, and the national body of the PDP say no, it is their birthright to feed candidates. So in all political parties, they have family issues. APC has our own family issues, and we are settling them at family level. Now, these sweepy allegations, sweepy claims, without naming faces, without being specific, they do not shed much light. I don't think we should continue to generate so much heat and very little light. Nigerians want light. If people pay what you call exorbitant, that's value judgment. What are the fees supposed to be, and where were they? What was the difference? Fees were exorbitant. Here, people could afford so much. I think we have moved beyond that. We have finished our primaries. We've submitted the names to INEC, and there are internal procedures for reconciliation, and we are working on those. That's what we have to do. But to continue to try to bring me back about, you know, settled issues. We are a large governing party, and it will only be strange if you are having graveyard peace. People, because they are free, they are not under one godfather, they are entitled to grumble and even grumble aloud. But that doesn't mean that as leaders we should join in the grumbling. We should move on, find solution, explain to those we need to explain to, and much more importantly, begin to articulate our own campaign agenda as we approach the issues. Nigeria has to now move away from issues of individuals, persons, to focusing on what concerns them, what is on the table for the average Nigerian. To be honest, I think for me, we must consciously now move beyond what people think is important and what I think is what my why. Well, we must set the agenda. I have a duty as national chairman to try to set the agenda of my party. And that agenda, with all due respect, shouldn't be set by other friends or observers or commentators or analysts. It should be set consciously. You know, we are not a firefighter that responds to where there is smokes. We have to manage our agenda. We have to manage our objective. We have to refocus on what connects us to Nigeria. We have to revisit the reason d'etat for forming the All Progressive Congress. For me, these are the issues I insist we must begin to focus on. Move our policy consciously away from focusing on individuals, whether they cough in the morning, they didn't cough at night. Those had very little value to the life of Nigerians. I want to deal with what affects the lives of our people and the primary purpose for political party formation.
Well, okay, I'll leave this line of questioning for now, but I can assure you I will come back to it towards the end of the interview. But let's look at the party, the APC. Many international observers and local analysts have said that based on the performance of the Buhari administration in the last 3.5 years, that they do not think that President Buhari deserves a second term. Some of these reports will include the report by the Economic Intelligence Unit, the Financial Times, the HSBC Securities, reflecting more or less also what they describe as a concern of Nigerians. Do you really think, in all honesty, that the president stands a chance to get a second term in 2019?
In all honesty, it is strange that it is foreigners who cry more than the bereaved. It is a media outfit located outside the shores of Nigeria that seems to claim greater knowledge of what this government has done or what it has not done. But those analysts also speak about the quality, the character, the reputation of other political presidential aspirants who are on parade. They speak about their past, about suspicion that these people are, they are not new in power, and they are raising issues about what did they know now that they didn't know when they were in government, what is new that they are going to offer. Are we recycling people who have exhausted their tenure and kicked out of office? You know, there are people who also raise those issues. I think for me, it would be worth my while to talk about the views of the ordinary Nigerian. I also hear Nigerians who remember that, you know, pension benefits that were not paid for 20 years under the PDP, they are being paid by this government. I've heard the head of service saying that for 6 years of PDP, there were promotions that were delayed. Don't forget, I come from the labor background. And that it took this government intervention to begin to try to settle those huge areas. Those have huge social implications for the well-being of the Nigerian people. People talk about the huge amount of money PDP spent on power. The more dollars they spend, the more darkness that Nigeria found itself in. So these are issues that Nigerians are talking about. I am not accountable to the financial intelligence, however that intelligence is defined. And everybody is aware now that these papers are not, they do not really have the kind of reputation they purport. After all, these are the same institutions that wrote lavishly about the Nigeria banking system, only to find a few weeks later that some of these banks were empty. They got all kinds of ratings abroad, but the customers are grooming. So for me, there are people who find joy in quoting foreign sources. I like to talk about the Nigeria people. They are our primary constituency, and they are the one who hire Mr. President, and to them, Mr. President is accountable. I think we've done a couple of things that will form the basis of our campaign that people are talking about. This is the only government that gives bailout money to state governments to enable them meet their most basic responsibility without bothering whether they are of the All Progressive Congress or the APC or the ABGA. I don't know any government before now that was that fair and just, regardless of political party affiliation. These are the things we should be talking about. You know, what are we doing differently? We had governments that spent 2, 3, 4... God knows how many times they went doing so-called groundbreaking over the more talked about Niger Bridge. And this government, as we speak, is doing something. It's not doing groundbreaking now. It's actually constructing the second Niger Bridge. These are the kind of things we want to talk about. And across the country, in Lagos, where I guess you are based down, where you are asking this question, there are a couple of things the government is doing in Lagos, the government is doing between Lagos and Ibadan, and across the country. These are things that we should talk about. It is not the views of sometimes hired or influenced foreign commentators. They are not superior to the Nigerian journalists. And if you ask me, I think it's the judgment of the Nigerian mass who is on the street trying to make his living. That guy who had been totally socially excluded, who is now remembered for the first time, whether you call it money, market money, whatever it is that is called, that the other Nigeria begins to say, oh, so government know I exist. So government can get across to me without walking to a cozy banking hall. They recognize that although I live selling tomatoes, that I also can be threatened. That the business of public funds can be the channel in such a way that the poorest among the trading community can have a part of government. These are the things we should begin to discuss. In any case, if opposition don't want to discuss them, we will discuss them. Because we have moved the government away from that as service elite to one that is downward looking and looking at the man on the street, the forgotten majority of Nigeria, the voiceless community. You know, I think we have a lot on the table, and very soon we will begin to compare notes between what this government has done, who has benefited, and what the previous government did and who benefited, and how they convert public debts, I mean private debts, to public liabilities, and privatize public funds to their private pockets. There are a lot of issues that impart, whether in the short run or in the long run. And of course, we are going to be able to get people who are knowledgeable about macroeconomic issues to be able to assist Nigeria to understand that there's always a time lag between when certain policies are put in place or when certain mismanagement occur and when the impact of those mismanagement begin to manifest in the life of the people. For me, these will be issues that I want to talk about. We must consciously begin to discuss issues, policy issues, security issues.
Sir, you just mentioned...
and all of that.
Sir, you just mentioned Lagos here, where we live. I know that your government have been borrowing a lot, especially in foreign debt, on infrastructure, right? And so, I mean, right here in Lagos, where we live, there's so many things that we see that is not happening, especially the Apapa gridlock. Can you tell us why your government has not looked into that matter?
Well, I think you should just play back your own stories about the Apapa crisis, the whole issues around the ports. You will find that for 60 years of PDP, they have been grappling with this problem. And what they couldn't face in 60 years, they're not going to disappear overnight. But the good thing, at least, is right now that there are conversations, and beyond conversations, there are policy issues with regards to what can the private sector do. I'm aware that there are agreements that have been negotiated and signed to encourage some private intervention, you know, on all of those issues. So every analyst must go back to play back. These are not problems that developed 3 days ago or 3 years ago. They've been there, and they would disappear overnight. But that is not to say that we should simply point out what they did do over 60 years. I think right now something is being done, but it cannot be like changing from NEPA to generator. It's a bit more complex than that.
Well, Comrade Oshiomhole, you spoke earlier, you said something earlier about doing certain things differently, and that you would like to focus on that. Now, what are the promises that your party is making to Nigerians? What are you likely to do differently if you were to win again in 2019?
Well, as I said, we already did a couple of things differently. For the first time, this government is focusing on the poorest of the poor. The government is putting in place social policies that seeks to locate the poorest amongst us and not join him in lamenting, but take concrete steps to put in place policy measures that are specifically targeted at the poorest. And this is happening across the country. I have just mentioned now, over the years, how much PDP spent, previous government spent, on power. We haven't spent a fraction of that. And the challenge we are dealing with today is to revisit, if you ask me, this is my personal opinion, the gross abuse of the privatization process, of the discourse that were handed over to very competent hands based on patronage. And because of the long-term agreement that government entered into with these operators, we have having to do with the huge challenges whereby even when you are able to generate more power, the disco does seem to have the capacity to carry out distribution so that Nigeria can feel the impact of any improvement that have been recorded. And I will expect that going forward, we will have to revisit some of the things if we try to manage them not to be seen to revoke what has been done before. And increasingly it's clear that the new guys simply lack the capacity. Those things we have to revisit, review, and maybe go back to the fundamentals. I've just told you now that we are not lamenting crisis in transportation. A lot is being done with regards to the railway system. And you will remember that the drawing board, Kaduna, Abuja was still on the drawing board. And today it is a reality. In different parts of the country, huge progress is being made in the area of infrastructure. What you can really correctly accuse the government of is that we don't seem to be communicating effectively all of the things that are going on around the country. And there are quite a bit that is going on. But the people that live in those areas know what is happening in their respective areas. I believe, to answer your question, that President Buhari will certainly be re-elected on the basis of his personal, the power of example, his own personal integrity, and the fact that those who are contested against him, there are a couple of things they can't say about themselves that this president will not only say, that other people will even say for him. And Nigerians are wiser now. It is cheap for people to make promises. But again, it is not so easy for people who have been in power before to pretend that they don't know what is going on. Some have been ministers, and we know the controversy that they generate managing their ministries, and we go to now ask them, so what will you now do differently in those sectors? And your record in those sectors are very clear. You've been at the center as number 2. Nigeria was turned into a completely unitary state. I heard somebody now talking about autonomy of local government. When I was president of NLC, I joined the Nigeria Union of Local Government Employees to campaign for autonomy, to ask the federal government to get out of controlling and centrally managing the local government, and even federal government withholding money made for local government. So this government respect the autonomy of the local government. Some of those issues are no longer there, but those coming now were part of the administration that almost imposed a very suffocating unitary government on Nigeria. So we are moving consciously away from those and see how we can, reorder the federal system. But these are no issues we can discuss in a morning show. I think they do require require more time to speak at length and some details to be able to explain the issues. But I can tell you, of all the candidates on parade, President Buhari is number 1. And I believe he will win. Nigerians know the difference.
Well,
they know what brought us to where we are. They know what explains the paradox between a rich nation whose people are getting poorer and poorer. And they know that the one disease that explains this is the character of those who have been in government.
Well, thank you. We'll take a short break.
Incidentally, those coming are not political virgins. They are people who have their records, and we speak to those records.
Chairman, we're back to you. Yes. I would like to just step back a little to what you said before we took a break. You were commenting on the power sector, and you were questioning the process that led to the emergence of the discos and the gencos. But we've had some representatives from that electricity sector on this program, and they are saying that the main problem is policy. The management of the policy process currently by the Ministry of Power. They complain, for example, about the eligible customer regulation, which reduces their spread and influence. They complain also about the fact that they are not getting the necessary support from the Ministry of Power. They also complain about the metering process, that government has not given them the necessary support, even about tariffs, and that they are not getting the returns. So is it really a question of the people managing the discos and the gencos, or the fact that government needs to provide a more enabling environment for the electricity sector to deliver on the Electricity Sector Reform Act and the outcomes?
Well, Ruben, the truth of the matter is, this goes beyond, the discourse, you can pick it from their mouth, but that is one side of the story. The truth of the matter is, I was in government when these discourses were being privatized. And I remember myself and my brother from Delta State, my other brother from Odokuru joined, Mimiko, but I and Uduaga, we met, and we issued a press conference. We addressed a press conference in which we pointedly accused the then government that it was unfair, to hand over, for example, Edo, Delta, Ondo, Disco to a company that has no knowledge whatsoever in electricity business, to a banker who is now the MD of the place, and a pharmacist who is now the chairman, and it's a family business. They have neither the competence, nor do they have the financial wherewithal in terms of resources, and it is scandalous that they've had to take money from public treasury, from the CBN, through what they call special window, to form what obviously ought to be a private enterprise. And I used to be a member of the National Council on Privatization when I was president of the NLC. And I know what the conditions are, what the law provides for, that you must show evidence that you have the technical know-how. You must also show evidence that you have the financial wherewithal. The whole idea was to inject fresh capital into the sector. What the previous government did was to hand over this discourse to people who didn't have the resources. They went into their banks, do insider tradings, take depositor funds when they didn't have fresh capital to inject, rather than attract foreign direct investment into our electricity sector to complement the limited resources we have. We found the system seeking to take depositor funds to buy this discourse and then fall it back on CBN to create special window. And if you look at the amount of money they have collected, taxpayers' money, give it to them at concessionary rate, even with all those additional support that they have gotten, which for me is wrong, because we cannot run private investment with public funds. That is not the promise of privatization, but that's what the government did. Now, what we can probably discuss, which I am discussing each time I have opportunity with the minister, is that when a fabric is too weak, there is no amount of patching that will straighten it. I think we have to go back to basics. These discos don't have the competence, they don't have the know-how, they don't have the wherewithal to do what they need to do for Nigerians to be bailed out of darkness. And it's a major question that we have to address.
Well, security was...
Of course, if you ask them, they're going to cry from morning to night about the enabling environment. It's like bringing me now to a football pitch, and I will say that the football pitch is not as beautiful as we see in Emirates Stadium in the UK. But carry me to Emirates Stadium. I don't know how to play. I don't know how to play. That is the truth. People can find excuses. Nigeria are tired of excuses. Why did you go buy to a project without knowing the ground rules? They ought to be familiar with government rules and regulations. And we are now in a democracy. They are able to persuade the National Assembly to make laws if the issues were regulatory framework, such that they will have the enabling environment they need. Now you talk about tariff. Now nobody in any clear market environment we subscribe to a situation in which you are asked to pay more precisely for what is not available. You know, government do have a social purpose, and it doesn't always coincide with the greed of private sector operators, particularly the ones that are not adding value, who just thought that, you know, buying into disco was as good as hawking fake import licenses, import fake subsidy claims to enrich themselves without adding value to the system. I think that is what has happened. And now we challenge you, Ruben. You've been a very active commentator and a very powerful writer. And you know I do have personal respect for you. Now, you just take the profile of each of the owners of this discourse and tell me which of them has had a history of being involved in electricity distribution, and therefore what qualified them to bid and to win those biddings, which led us to where we are today. The truth must be told.
Well, let's talk a little about security. I mean, your party promised to deal with the challenge of insecurity in Nigeria. Insecurity. And, you know, one of the campaign lines was that President Buhari, having been a former military head of state and, you know, a leading soldier with a lot of strong credentials, will be able to deal decisively with the challenge of insecurity in Nigeria. But Nigerians are concerned that almost 4 years later, this problem persists. It has not only persisted, other theaters of insecurity have been opened across Nigeria.
Well, that is part of the story. I think the truth is that new forms of insecurity are manifesting around the world. That would be a more holistic appraisal of the security situation around the world. But Ruben, I need to remind you that I was a member of National Council of State as governor of Edo State. And the then president called us for a meeting and paraded the service chiefs who admitted that 28 or more local governments were now being controlled by Boko Haram. And on account of the level of insecurity, the military chiefs submitted that they were not in a position to guarantee the conduct of a general election. And on account of those insecurity, elections were postponed. Today, Boko Haram has been severely weakened. The much talked about mystery around the Sambisa forest has been demystified. And the Nigerian Armed Forces have made a bold statement. Ruben, you will recall that under the previous government, a lot of our young men were being lined up for so-called running away from battle as if they were cowards. And they were charged, some were sentenced to death because the money voted for them was being stolen by the general that was supposed to provide leadership. Today, those are history. So as we speak, there is not one local government in Nigeria that is not under the control of the Nigerian government, contrary to what it was. Of course, you still have pockets of structure and there. And Ruben, for all of us who are familiar with insurgency, you know that it's not something you wipe off overnight. America with all its powers, Europe, Germany with all its skill in security, a couple of times they suffer some embarrassment when terrorists attack some soft targets. And there are huge tolls of, of casualties around the world. So there can be no question that under President Buhari's leadership, some commendable progress has been made. Certainly, this is not to suggest that we should go to sleep and say all is over. No, we do need to build on the progress that has been made. Now, the new forms of crime that you are talking to, unfortunately, you didn't list them. But I guess you'll be talking of the level of kidnapping. Now, kidnapping is the surface under PDP. And I was governor of Edo State. I found myself helpless at a point. Some generals were kidnapped in Edo State, and the kidnappers were even threatening that they might kidnap me if I made noise. So, yes, we still have a share of kidnapping, but not of the scale that we witnessed under the previous government. I don't know what is the new form that you're talking about. Yes, religious extremism and so on. Again, short memory. You remember the Metashine that even other talking about generals being head of state, even other General Babangida, there was this Metashine riot in Kano. I hope you have not forgotten. We had this huge crime in Kaduna State, where which I believe the then head of state called a civilian coup. So we've had this problem, but maybe problem is we have poor documentation in terms of history. This is never to justify, insecurity anyway, but just to say that it will be incorrect to suggest that no new initiative have been involved or that not much progress has been made. A lot of progress has been made, but every Nigerian is entitled to a secured home. Every Nigerian is entitled to drive in secured roads. Every Nigerian is entitled to go to a secured market. To the extent that we see from time to time have some attack here and there, government must continue to be on its toes to deal with this and another form of criminality. But around the world, we are witnessing every day. Watching through your television station, we hear about, with all the sophistication, we find that terrorists manage to attack here and there in Europe, in America, in Asia, everywhere around the world. And Nigeria has its own fair share. And because we represent about a quarter of the black Africa, south of Sahara. It is not surprising that we also seem to have perhaps our own share of insecurity. But what you can't say, Ruben, with all due respect, is to suggest that no progress has been made. I think progress has been made. We are discussing election now. Right. Nobody is going to say we are going to postpone election on account of insecurity. I think we must encourage government to sustain what it has started, and it must provide modern facilities to our armed forces. They must get more motivation, and whatever needs to be done to rekit them must be done. We must improve in training and take advantage of those countries that are willing to collaborate, having recognized that terrorism is a global problem, to take advantage of those and get all the support we can get to encourage our men and women in uniform to do what they have to do to make the country safer and much more secured.
Sir, with all due respect, your views on Boko Haram might not be shared by millions of Nigerians, because every day we see attacks on the newspapers on Boko Haram. Every single day there's one attack after another. Even the herdsmen's crisis, it's a serious issue. So can you tell us what initiative your administration has put in place to take care of the herdsmen crisis first and then Boko Haram?
Well, I think, with all due respect, you have just recycled the same old question. Insurgency is not like civil war. You live in a community and unknown to you, a member of your family is affiliated to one of these extremists, and he calls out the money and strike before you find that he's a Boko Haram agent. Now, this will happen from time to time. The point I've made, which you ever seem to dispute, and I think if you don't dispute it, that will be fair enough. That's to say that as we speak, Boko Haram is not hanging any flag in any of the 774 local governments across the country. But from time to time, they are able to strike. It's not surprising, which is why we must remain on duty, which is why we must continue to look at their new pattern as we decimate their numbers. They are resorting to new tactics, and our security agency must also begin to evolve new tactics to deal with them. And I think they are doing that. Now, the herdsmen thing, again, play back history. When Governor Suswan was governor of Benue State, there were several incidents of herdsmen attack. And so it shouldn't be portrayed as if it is a new phenomenon. It has been there, but that does not. That is not to suggest that we should live with it. I believe that there are initiatives being put in place. I believe there's renewed engagement to convince Nigerians that the choice we have is not how to live with, to restrict some Nigerians' free movement. The choice we have is to convince every Nigerian that this is our country. We are not going to be able to issue resident permit for people to choose where to live. But it is possible to convince everyone and put in place a government, not only at the federal level, a government at state level, at local government, to play their part and sensitize Nigerians on the need to live together. And I think there have been a good example, for example, is Plateau State. Okay. Before the current governor came into office, Governor Lalong, every other day there was virtually war in Plateau State. And for 3 years, there was not one single incident. Until recently when a former governor was put on trial over corrupt practices. And as soon as he got bail, a couple of things happened. Then we began to witness an attempt to renew the hostility between the herdsmen and the local farmers. The governor there has done a very sensible thing, convincing both the herdsmen and the local farmers of the need to live together and agree on rules of engagement. And those were working, and I believe he's strengthening those now to ensure that we continue to have peace. Now, the point to make is that every Nigerian, including media, we do have a duty, to contribute to the maintenance of peace and security. And it is unhelpful when sometimes, the media's bias is so open and such that you wonder if Nigeria is in trouble, if people will do broadcasting in the air, when they even seek to complicate the issues by putting or imputing religious motive into what is obviously a mere criminality. I think every Nigeria, including Arise, has a duty to ensure that we all rise in unison to fight crime. and to be able to play our part in reporting suspected criminals to the appropriate agency. Those are duties that we must do. They are not just, we must go also beyond military solution, police solution, to deal with other social tools that we need to evoke to give more Nigerians a sense of, to get them busy so that we win them away from crime. And that's the leakage between some of these other programs that are targeted at the poorest amongst us, to give them a sense of belonging and a sense of recognition as citizens of Nigeria. But you are not going to expect a vanilla solution to this. But government must continue to be to revisit and do what they must do to make Nigeria secured for all of us, whether rich or poor.
I would like to ask you a question about labor relations. As a former labor leader, what are your views
about
the non-payment of salaries in most states of the Federation, both APC and PDP? And what's your take on this raging controversy over the new national minimum wage?
Well, my views are clear. I have argued this even while I was in government. The payment of wages is not a function of prosperity of the employer. It is not an act of kindness for an employer to pay the employees wages at the end of the month. And it is even a criminal. There are provisions in our Labor Act that says that you cannot delay the payment of salaries in excess of 30 days interval, which means salaries ought not to accumulate beyond 30 days. And government decides the size of its employment. But when it has made the decision to employ, it has obligation to pay. Even the Holy Bible says that the laborer is entitled to his wages. I think, again, this is where President Buhari stands out clearly. He had publicly asked public sector employers, how do you sleep when you have not paid your workers for 1 month, for 2 months, for 9 months, sometimes for upward of a year? But he didn't stop at lamenting it. He went on to provide the more talked about bailout fund. And I said, please use this money to bail out your workers, pay their salaries, and pay pension arrears. He did it once, he did it twice, and even the over-deduction from states that was done under the PDP, when in the name of settling our foreign debts, they went into state treasury and over-deducted. That was done by PDP. Again, President Buhari's government, even in spite of the huge financial challenges that it faces, decided that in order to assist the state to meet their social obligations, to begin to repay this, what is now popularly referred to as Paris Club refund. And done that 2-3 installments, and each time the governors are told you must use this money to among other things, settle pension arrears and be up to date in the payment of salaries. Well, but because we are in a federation, president can sermonize, he can appeal. It's gone beyond that to provide the resources for the state to do so. But if in spite of that, some state governors choose different priorities, because we are in a federal system, there isn't much. But I'm very proud to say that this president has rich conscience, and he recognizes that the poorest Nigerian, the Nigerian worker, deserve his wages, which is why he has had to publicly lament his own pain that there are governors who are not paid salaries as are when due, whether they are PDP or APC, is immaterial. And he's seeking to deal with it. He has also provided support across party divide. And I think that is statesmanship at its best.
Well,
now, as for my views on the minimum wage, I think I tried to deal with that when I was a governor. I have told my colleagues then that wages is not a burden in a society because in economics, depending on the school you subscribe to, if it's the classical school that believes in market forces and all of that, economic history tells us that when nations are in depression, that one way to bail them out is to put in place policy instruments that will ensure that people work and they get paid, and because they get paid, purchasing power is enhanced, and because purchasing power is enhanced, producers will respond to that by seeking to produce more goods and services, and in the process, they will recruit more hands. But when you do not pay wages, you create a vicious cycle, no payment of wages, leading to low purchasing power, non-payment of rents, compounding the problem of those who have invested in real estate, depressing the the commercial life of the state and of the country, and moving away from a virtuous cycle to a vicious cycle. And I tried to settle this question by increasing minimum wage in Edo State to 25,000 from 18,000. That was about 32 or 33%. And I remember some people calling me and say, how will you pay it? And I'm on record as having paid it. As we speak, Edo State government, my successor, has continued to pay the 25,000. And my own steward in my house, I do not pay him 25,000 because he can't live on 25,000. My driver doesn't earn 25,000 because he cannot live on 25,000. I think it's hypocrisy for anybody. I do not agree with those who say Nigeria cannot afford a more realistic minimum wage. As they say, and my being in government or now chairman of a party can't change what I believe in. I think that no nation has enough to meet the greed of leaders, but nations have enough to meet basic needs of their people. The challenge is, what do we do differently to move away resources? I have asked some people, if you had Julius Berger to come and construct a kilometer of road or any of the major civil engineering contractors to do the cost of 1 cubic meter of concrete when the last minimum wage was fixed, is that what we are paying today? Do you approach your contractors and tell them, because of your differences in salary, your revenue profile, because Lagos State is richer than maybe Edo State, therefore the cost that you pay to procure a bag of cement in Lagos, when you get to Edo State, does the price drop? It doesn't drop. Well, so if every other cost item is going up, and truth is, we are in a market economy. You can't subject workers to stagnant wages in the face of rising prices. That is a double squeeze. Now, when you take into account the fact that because of our population growth rate, more and more people are unemployed, it means the few who are employed are the ones subsidizing the many who are not. I think that, with all due respect to everyone who is in government, I have been in government, I think we will never have enough. But if we manage differently, recruit a level that is optimum, and pay attention to fraud in our system. Ruben, I don't know what you think. For me, I find it embarrassing in the 21st century when governments after government, both states and federal, speak talking about ghost workers. Truth is, sometimes the real problem in the public sector is money being stolen in the name of salaries. People who are not working be paid. And when they steal money in the name of wage bill in the establishment department, and all manners of people are involved, which what I call cooperative between, involving all manners of people. And every year you hear that federal government has saved 40,000 ghost workers have been weeded out. And I ask the question, who count ghosts? It's only in Nigeria that ghosts are known. And not only know their content.
One or two political questions.
Now that we have discovered who is prosecuting who, whether by state governor or by federal, whether PDP or APC, I'm clear on this. These are not party issues. They have to do with getting government to begin to refocus and to recognize that we face a huge risk if you have an army of people who think they are employed, but in the end, they are simply not employed because wages are not paid. The laborer deserves his wages, and a minimum wage for Nigeria, for me, don't forget, even as a governor, I joined the NSC to protest when some people were suggesting that minimum wage should be abolished. Nigeria must create a social floor. We have a responsibility to Nigerian citizens. The primary purpose of government is the welfare of the people. And welfare is not a function of what is the price of crude oil. If Nigeria doesn't have oil today, and you choose to have a public sector, you will have obligation in law to make wages, to pay wages as I went due.
I would like to come in here with another set of questions. And this is political. I hope you wouldn't mind. Now, with Governor Amosun...
Did you hear this now?
Yes, I'm trying to ask a question about Ogun State.
Pardon?
A question about Ogun State and Imo State.
Yes.
Now, with Governor Amosun so implacable, with many of his supporters saying that they are going to move to another party, do you think that the APC stands a chance of winning in Ogun State in 2019. Same question for Imo State. With
I think we will win in Ogun State because
with Okorocha so bitter.
Okay.
And he says spokesman issued a statement, even accusing you of nepotism and all kinds of things. Do you think that the APC also will stand a chance in Imo State?
Okay, I think you want to reload this question, my dear brother Ruben. The truth is that in Ogun State we will win. First, because PDP has its own buffet of crisis as well. As we speak, we don't know who is the actual governorship candidate in Ogun State, because the National Secretariat of PDP parade a particular candidate and a running mate, and another group headed by Kashamutu, with due respect to him, also parade a governorship candidate and a running mate. So while they are sorting out those issues, we will be sorting out our own issues. I believe Governor Amosun is my friend. People as human beings are entitled to feel disappointed if things don't work out the way they want. I think usually, like any leader, after some time, he will recognize the greater interest of the party. I know he's a loyal party man. And I can't see him voting with his feet. I think he recognizes as a statesman who has contributed to the growth and development of Ogun State, he will want to ensure that his party continue to govern the state and plays the role of a statesman. I have no fear at all. I believe everything considered, because Ruben, as you know, this thing called choice is a relative question. You will be comparing APC strength relative to PDP strength, and also taking into account the serious internal divisions in PDP, also in Ogun State, and the fact that you're also beginning to have factions who are defecting from PDP in Ogun State to other political parties. All of those will play out, and APC remain the stronger party. And given Amosun's contribution in terms of governance, those will be compared to PDP contribution to the governance of Ogun State when they were in power for I believe for the first 16 years. And Nigerians will be able to say, okay, these people were here for 16 years, so what are they going to bring you on board? With whatever we have as internal issues in APC, they do not in any way undermine the fact that Amosun has something to show for his governorship of that state, for which I am very proud as chairman of the party. And I'm sure that he will overcome his anger, and we will work with him to see how we can reconcile all our various interests in Ogun. Now, as for my dear friend Rochas Okorocha, who talks about nepotism, well, you know, I do not want to, as the head of the family, if it's to some people, to continue to bring the family matters into the marketplace. As the elder, I will keep the family matter within the family house. That is what maturity, my level of responsibility imposes on me. So I will join in arguing. But truth is, while I was in government, there was no any other Oshiomhole in government. This is not something that is up to us. As a journalist, you can go to Edo and ask how many Oshiomholes were in government when Governor Oshiomhole was at Osadebe Avenue. I will stop that. Okorocha is a great guy. He's one of those who left APGA to join APC. He is on record as having contributed his quota to the formation of the APC. But we also have to agree that one tree can never make a forest. And we have to encourage those who think otherwise to recognize that this is a fact. And what we are doing in Imo is to try to reconcile individuals with the great people of Imo State. And, you know, sometimes the limitations of some analysts who are not in the real business of politics is to speak to, you know, we limit our conversation to the big names. But, you know, the beauty of democracy is that it's not about big names. It's about big numbers. Now, the big numbers in Imo, they are with us. And I think Governor Rochas appreciate that fact. Now, as for whether people will decap or not, I'm not so sure. But again, even if they do, they will make no history. After all, in the recent past, people, city governors, decamp for one reason or the other because they wanted to be presidents. Having decamped, they found that there are too many presidential aspirants. They have since reconciled themselves with the reality that although they decamp from APC, believing they are going to be the presidential candidate of PDP, they got there and found an overcrowded house. I think some of them are quietly taking governorship ticket. Some have even gone back to take senatorial ticket, and they are living with the new reality. I think that is the way it is. So people can have expectation, but the beauty of democracy is that it is the mass of the Nigerian people that will demand. It's a game of numbers. In Imo State, we have the numbers to defeat any other aspirant. And I'm sure Okorocha, when he overcome his disappointment with regards to who he would have preferred on a good day to succeed him, and he recognized as a Democrat that is the way this works. Sometimes it works. Outcomes can be predicted. Some other time they can produce shocking outcome. And I think it shows that Nigerian democracy is evolving, because we are not running traditional rulership. We are the king. We know that the firstborn will be the next king, and everything will be done to make sure he doesn't die before his father. But in a democracy, we all can plan, we can project, we can strategize and plan who succeeds us. But if the wish of the people, if the people think otherwise and they vote differently, those outcomes might just turn out to be a bit embarrassing. But overall, when you overcome your shock, you will work with the reality. I think that is what works everywhere. My pride is that, contrary to what Nigerians have always believed, that in Nigeria politics, whatever a big man wants, he must get. We have tried to return our party to the members of the party. The members of the party can do no wrong. If majority prefer someone, and on election day, it is those majority that we vote. And Ruben, remember, by February, March next year, the vote of a governor will be one. The vote of the unemployed person will be one. The vote of the guy from Naira market will be one. And those votes are not weighted the way they are done in the boardroom, because we are all equal shareholders in the Nigeria project. I believe we are making peace. We will make peace with Rochas. He's a great guy. He played a pioneering role. I was a governor, he was a governor. We all worked together to form the APC. You cannot build a house just because the person you thought will occupy your bedroom when you vacate it, the other members of the family choose another person. I think over time you recognize that it's a family house. Tenants will come and go, but the family house remains.
Okay, sir, I would like to ask you this question. So, with the arrest of the arrest that happened last weekend of APC candidate Hope Uzodinma, do you think that this will impact his chances, the chances of him winning the elections in Imo State?
Yeah, first, as we speak, Hope Uzodinma is a city senator, which means, and he comes from one of the largest senatorial zone. Incidentally, he comes from the same senatorial zone as my dear friend and brother Rochas Okorocha. And if he was able to win his election as he did, as a senator, he already commanded the trust of 1/3, or probably more than 1/3 of the state, which Olu senatorial zone represent. And he's been one of the credible voice in the Senate. And I'm sure the good people of Imo State knows him well. He's not a stranger to politics. And he's familiar with the political contour of Imo State. I believe comparing him with any other candidate in any other political party, courtesy on the platform for any other political party in Imo State, obviously our candidate is the most outstanding. And I'm sure that the great people of Imo State will vote for him.
Well, let me ask you this question. Earlier on, you talked about the social investment program of the Buhari government, about trader money, which you say is a way of reaching out to the people, the poor people of Nigeria. But poverty still remains very high. The economy is not in a good shape. Naira is exchanging for about 350 Naira to $1. What would the government do differently if it were to win again in 2019 to strengthen the Nigerian economy, which obviously appears not to be working?
Well, this is a particular viewpoint. I don't think that is the general view. Nigeria economy, like economies of other nation states, That is characteristics of market economy. They have boom and bust, boom and bust. Talking of exchange rate, I will just ask you a simple question. And I know you have the answer, I have the answer. You probably will be more correct with the answer because you have been a very powerful player in the media and one of the most respected columnists over the years. I just ask you, by May 29, when PDP took over power, what was the exchange rate, Naira to the dollar? By the time President Obasanjo left, or more accurately, by the time President Jonathan left government on May 29, 2015, what was the exchange rate? You will see that the Naira suffered huge devaluation between 1999 and 2015, even as that period coincided with the period in which oil peaked at $140 a barrel. And with all the rhetoric that successive government have made, truth remains that our major source of foreign earning remains the oil sector, unfortunately. And so what happened to the oil market has huge implication for the stability of the Naira. Now, when the Naira, when you look at those records, you will find that the history of Naira devaluation, beginning with when military President Babangida spoke about first year and second year, and move away from a fairly managed exchange rate to a liberalized exchange rate, deregulate the market, the banking system. The Naira has never been able to find its level. And so it would be half of the truth to speak to the recent devaluation as if it is the first time. I do remember other President Yari with my very dear friend, Mr. Soludo, as governor of CBN. He devalued the Naira by 25% at a time when the oil market was still performing at an average of $108 to the barrel. And I asked him, you had said you were going to peg the Naira at 125 Naira to the dollar. And how come you have devalued? Of course, he has his own sophisticated explanation why it was in the national interest to devalue the Naira. So in making these comments, we mustn't talk as if the history of Naira fluctuation or devaluation started from 2015. But also, these are records which I'm sure we are going to bring out and get people who are capable of analyzing them to do so more competently. The fact that even at a time when Nigeria oil prices were hovering at around $140 and an average of $108, look at the federal budget and you will see that we were still resorting to huge deficit financing, such that about 80% of the total budget in Nigeria at that time was still devoted to the recurrent expenditure, which equals more or less the total earnings of the federation. And so if the then federal government spent 1 Naira on road construction, that money was borrowed. And so we had huge debt overhang side by side with so-called budget surplus. So these issues are a little more complicated, but when you selectively seek to explain some of these serious economic matters, macroeconomic issues from what has happened between 2015, you deny yourself the benefit of recognizing that we're in a dynamic environment and that when you take certain economic measures in 2012, 2013, 2008, 2009, that there is delayed, there's a time lag between when you take those measures and when they begin to manifest. Now, look at the amount of money that was stolen from the treasury. And those bleeding meant that your reserve was going down. And this is something everybody can verify. And the strength of a currency is not like miracle. You don't proclaim miracle that your currency is going to be strong. It's something that can be see through. When your reserve is going down, as it went down under the PDP, obviously the basis of the strength of the Naira was being weakened. So by the time that manifests in devaluation, you have to recognize that that was a consequence of the action taken by the previous government.
All right, sir.
And of course, you know that any attempt to artificially try to pretend that the Naira's, the reserve was that you could maintain the old exchange rate will simply lead to all kinds of abuses, at least by people who subscribe to market logic. So whatever you want to say, those devaluation were the consequences of declining foreign reserve arising from massive abuses that characterize the PDP years of government.
All right, so we just have one final question for you, and thank you so much for indulging us so far. So do you, are you still determined to remove Senate President Bukola Saraki, and do you believe that you have the numbers to do so?
Pardon?
I'm referring to...
I didn't get the question.
I'm referring to the Senate President, Bukola Saraki. Are you still determined to remove him? And do you believe that you have the numbers to do so?
Well, I think it's about morality. We just had an election in U.S. And the Democrat produced more members in the won more seats in the Congress, and what they did that without much ado, the leadership of the House changed. This kind of question didn't have to arise. Now, Saraki belonged to a minority party as he stands today in the Senate, and the truth about democracy is that it's a game of numbers. It is unacceptable that minority provide leadership over majority. Now, however, he mismanaged the process of manipulate tools of reward, using carrot and stick to sustain himself with power at huge cost to the country. I remain convinced that Saraki must show honor and character by vacating voluntarily. That is what it should be. Now, whether we have the number or we don't have the number, time will tell. But I remain convinced that Saraki does not deserve to insist, or he shouldn't insist as a matter of moral obligation, that he impose minority rule. The danger we face is that when you set up this kind of precedent, over time, people begin to see it as a way of life. I remain convinced that we can't have minority rule in the National Assembly. And we will have to do everything possible to assist Saraki to vacate. I have no apologies for that.
Well,
because
Chairman,
democracy is about numbers. It's not about minority rule.
Chairman,
And if we celebrate that we adopted American presidential system, in that system, it's minority that rules.
Yeah.
Once there is elections and you have the numbers, it's the party with the majority that provide leadership. We can't go back to Nigeria and change that logic. The part of honor for Saraki is to vacate. The second is, the Supreme Court has told the country in Amici versus INEC and PDP that it's political parties that win elections, not individuals. If that is so, majority party that Nigerians elected was APC, as evidenced by the number that we have in the National Assembly. So if Nigeria did, and on that basis Saraki became Senate President, when he moved with his eyes open, based on his own in search of what he call greener pastures, which I'm sure he has since been humbled by the Port Harcourt outcome. He has to just vacate and allow the majority to continue to rule. But so far he's manipulating it, and I'm surprised that even people who spend all their life, including my dear friend Ruben, who has spoken extensively for democracy, even before 1999, one of the most credible columnists that I personally appreciate, that he can possibly find himself not readily able to admit that it is irregular to have a minority someone elected and becoming Senate President on the platform of a political party that has majority senators in the Senate, decamping to opposition that is a minority, and insisted that he retain the tools and using instrument of carrot and stick to keep himself in office at huge cost to the federal, to the Nigerian state. If it's convenient politically now for people to say that minority rule is okay, it's up to them. But me, I will stubbornly stick to what I believe is truth. Countries are held together not only by the technical rule of law, there's also strong ethical commitments. strong normative values.
Well,
Those are absent.
Thank you, Comrade Chairman.
Democracy can hardly thrive.
Yeah. Before we close this,
I hope that one day Saraki will reconcile himself with the reality that he can't eat his cake and have it.
Thank you. But before we close this conversation, I want to ask you a question about Chief Anthony Anenih, who died recently.
Yes.
You didn't always agree with him. The two of you at a point where political rivals in the politics of Edo State and Nigeria's party politics. What do you remember of him? How do you remember him? I saw many comments. I must have missed your comment on him. But this is an opportunity for you to say something about him.
No, I issued a tribute. I acknowledge that he was a strong political leader whose influence went beyond the Edo State, and considering that he come from Edo State, a minority in the Nigeria geopolitical calculations, I think it is remarkable that he was able to dominate his party and stamp his authority and seek to influence the direction of the party for as long as he did. So for PDP family, I believe it was a huge loss. But on my part, yes, like I told him, we in Edo recognize him as a father, even by mere reasons of his age. He was old enough to be my father, and I never hesitated to publicly admit to that. But like I've always told him, when you have many children, they may not all agree with the way daddy wants to run the house. And politically, I was unable to agree with his own political values and some of the tactics he resorted to. But I have respect for him. And the good news is that, as if he knew this was going to happen, about a year ago, I attended an event in Uromi at the Catholic Church. And that was shortly after he returned from his medical trip, where he told the world how he went through 8-hour surgery, and that he thanked God that he survived, because the doctors didn't even give him a chance. And on that occasion, like a statesman, he said, I have told my wife just yesterday that I have forgiven all those, he has forgiven all those who offended him in his political life. And he said, on his own, I said, particularly Adams, even if he doesn't ask for it. And this was in a Catholic church. We are both Catholics. It was my turn to also make a speech. And I also said, if he has ever offended me, a father can't offend his son and the son keep grudging the father. I have also forgiven him. But the good news is that these issues were never personal. We didn't quarrel over family land. We didn't quarrel over family issues. We quarrel over what is the best way to govern Edo State, what is the most appropriate political culture that we want to bequeath on our children. How do we move away from rigging elections and the position to align the people? How do we allow the people to lead? That was why my own slogan is, let the people lead. Against the background of the fact that we're having a democracy in which godfatherism was the order of the day. So we had those differences, were never personal, but I've always respected him as an elder. He lied with our culture. And the good news, which is why his death pained me, and when I say so, I'm not pretending over it, because I had planned to pay him a visit and to do so publicly before he died. And I was going to formally inform him of my election, because it will surprise you to know that among the very first person to call me after my election as the chairman of the APC was Chief Tony Anenih, now of blessed memory. And he said, I saw a missed call from him twice, and I called him back. I said, yes, I'm calling to congratulate you and to wish you well. And he said, Adams, I believe you will bring about some positive changes to the way in which APC is managed. But people may have forgotten now that APC had this whole crisis even before I became the national chairman. And he said, I have called my people in Edo. I have told them they should please accord you the respect you deserve as national chairman. They shouldn't see you now as a local player, and it can't be in Edo that people will be trying to pull you down. I have spoken to my party people in Edo, never again to say some, make statements that are designed to injure your reputation. And he wished me well, and he said, I ask you to pay attention to your personal security, because you are going to have enemies both from within and from without. I almost shed tears. First, because this is coming from a man old enough to be my father, someone that politically had engaged, and through my effort and the collaboration with the Edo people, other God guardians, I was able to defeat his party and perpetually today keep PDP out of power in Edo State, which is why now he left this planet Earth without being able to reclaim the governance of his own state. But in spite of that, he could call me to say those kind words. I went to the president and I said, sir, today, you know, I had mixed feelings. Here is Chief Anenih calling me to say so nice things about me. And I actually observed that since then, my very dear friend Anobi has not, you know, abstained from doing what he used to do when I was there, which shows that he really did speak to him as he told me. So it's a huge loss to all those who know him, not because we necessarily agree with his brand of politics, but he was truly a fighter. And I say that whatever people choose to do, they should master it well. And later, Anenih mastered his game, and he commanded control. He dominated the PDP political machine, even not because he comes from a majority ethnic group, but on the sheer strength of his own weight of experience, such that a city president in my president, when I was president of NSC, referred to him as his leader. When President Obasanjo called Anenih his leader in a meeting at the villa that I attended, I was humbled. So we all pray that God forgive him his sins. He must have committed quite a bit, like any human being, and that God grant him eternal rest in heaven. And as an Edo man, we will all pay him the appropriate respect and tribute when he will be laid to rest. And I commiserate with the family, and our heart goes to them, and I hope that God will give them the fortitude
to
bear obviously what is an irreparable loss, not only to the family, but to the political class, particularly those of the right.
Well, thank you so much for honoring our invitation.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, my comrades and my brothers and sisters.
Thank you.
It's time now for a short break. When we come back, conveners of the Handshake Across Nigeria Summit, Austin Nweze and Emeka Nwadioke, will be joining us in the studios. Do stay with us.